game journalists.
I know they're an easy target for ridicule, but they deserve it. I mean, look at this. Look at that.
I've got 3 articles today, each from a website called The Gamer. And for our first item of business,
If you won't give Aloy a girlfriend, make her asexual. That's a great line of reasoning. Like, why does Aloy need to have a romantic relationship? That would not work with her character at all. And saying you have to establish her as asexual.
what would that add to her character? I don't understand why you want this.
And yes, anyone who's not currently in a romantic relationship, they must be asexual. That's basically the logic this article is following. It's somewhat surprising that an attractive young woman, outcast and lonely her entire life, is suddenly thrown into a melting pot of other attractive young people, knowing the world could soon come to an end, and never smooches a single soul to blow off some steam. That is the most garbage art. You could say that about any protagonist from anything ever. They're saving the world, but why don't they go out with somebody if they're saving the world? Blow off some stress. What I hate about Mother 3 is how there's not a make-out scene where they all make out with each other because they're so stressed out about the world coming to an end. I hope Arrow Ace people can see some representation in Aloy, but if it's deliberate, I wish they'd just commit and say that. I don't see why you need to know what Aloy's sexuality is to be able to relate with her as a character. You don't go, man, I would relate to this character if only I knew what gender she prefers. What does it matter? Like, relate to the character, not who she prefers in bed, honestly. You can have great stories about that people can relate to, but just shoving it in there just for the sake of it isn't gonna make her any more relatable, and it's just gonna feel lazy and forced. You don't have to give your character a sexuality and give them a romance plotline, or if they don't have a romance plotline, explain that they're asexual. This article claims that the characters are growing staler because of this. Aloy saying that she's asexual, that's not how you make compelling characters.
Overall, I've got to say, this one's pretty bad. I give it a too much algae score of way too much algae. Like, it's covered in algae. You can't even see it. Like, I couldn't find the gloves, so, this next article is titled, Persona 6 Should Embrace Poly Relationships. And boy, this is I'm not even recording, am I? Oh, no, I am.
This is actually the article that inspired me to make this video in the first place, so you can thank Jade King for giving me the idea for this series.
Joker and Ryuji should be canon boyfriends.
The thing with Persona is there is no real canon relationship because you get to choose who you go out with in Persona, so none of the relationships are really canon. Forget Ryuji, none of the other relationships are canon because you get to choose. Not even the relationships with the girls are canon, not any of them. People argue, oh, Makoto's canon. No, she isn't. None of them are canon. Their romantic relationship arguably makes the most sense given the time they spend together and the bond they manage to form. This is just with the assumption that both of them are gay. You're just kind of assuming that. Not every single character in fiction is gay. We are subjected to straight romance options, even if they happen to involve adults, teachers, or even our surrogate little sister. Wow, you really went with the surrogate little sister thing.
Kinky.
Writing and characters is where this series frequently falls short. The only critique you're offering for the writing and characters is that there's not enough gay orgies in the game. Like, I don't understand that's not a very good critique of the writing and characters. There are plenty of critiques you can use against the writing of this game. Like, you can critique the pacing, you can critique that some of the dialogue is bad, but just saying that there's not enough gay sex in this game, I don't accept that as a valid criticism of it, to be honest. There's nothing wrong with a monogamous romance in Persona, yet I can't help but feel that a polyamorous relationship spread across the Phantom Thieves or similar group of characters would actually work. That would be be so awkward. The bond between this group is strong enough that I could see it eventually morphing into a mutual romance. Gee, it's almost like friends are something that exists, and not just because you're close friends with somebody doesn't mean you have to start going out with them. I don't see why not, or perhaps you choose a selection of different romantic partners to pursue and ask that they be prone to such an arrangement. Like, the amount of writing they'd have to do for this, they have to have romance scenes for every possible combination of romantic partner. If my math's right, and it's probably not, to be honest, but if my math is right, that would be like over 9,000 different scenes they would have to write, like, for each romantic scene. That's so infeasible. With most of these characters, any of these characters actually, I can't imagine any of them actually being into a polyamorous relationship. Not a single one of them. You seem to want game developers to just jam this stuff into their games without a second thought. It's too progressive a concept to land with fans of the JRP genre anyway. Way to just slam an entire genre. You're basically just calling them sexist pigs. You're calling fans of entire genres. You're insulting them. This is why people hate game journalists, because they say crap like this. Like, you just insult all of your readers. Well, the closest we'll come is a female protagonist. This sort of implies that we haven't already had a female protagonist, which, you know.
There's 2 of them!
I give this article an algae rating of a lot of algae. Wasn't as bad as the first one, but it's not fantastic. It has a lot of algae all over it. It's covered in algae. But speaking of the next article, or did I?
Bioshock Infinite has one of the worst stories in video games. Now, I understand where a lot of the controversy surrounding this game's story comes from.
But one of the worst stories of any video game? I mean, have you played Kingdom Hearts? There's no competition.
Maybe there's some points to back it up. I don't know. Who knows? We're so obsessed with being perceived as politically mature and emotionally poignant. Was it? I mean, if you want to say it's trying to be politically mature, it's dealing with the politics of the 1920s. Sure, it has some things to say, but it's also the game where you dig through bins for rotten food and fire crows come from your hands. So I love the implication that you can't take the story seriously if there's any sort of fantastical element about it. That's the implication here. And I think that's really ridiculous, because if you take that, pretty much there's no game that can have a good story. So overwrought with pompous ideology, not as pompous as thinking that it's offensive that the Persona characters aren't all having sex with each other. Like, geez. One of the defining takeaways is that the freedom fighters are just as flawed as their racist oppressors, because they also resort to violence in order to further their cause. The theme of the game wasn't that all violence is necessarily bad. If you look at the leader of the freedom fighters, she is really corrupt in that game, and just as bad as the people they're fighting against. So I don't understand what your point is. You shouldn't point out that people can be misled by people who you think have good intentions. You have the mentality of a 6-year-old. Violence begets violence, and it doesn't matter if you're if you're fighting for equal rights or for a world where racism isn't a thing. That's a little... Look, if I wrote that word in my current media communications class, where we're trying to become journalists, I don't think I would get a very good score on that particular story, because I don't think that's professional journalism there. But whatever. But gamers like to feel smart. You like to feel smart by telling everyone else that they're an idiot. That's what you're doing. It seems to me that you're telling everyone who enjoys this game that they're idiots. So you sure like to feel smart by putting other people down.
My rating for this one is just a little bit of algae. This one didn't make me retch in pain or anything like the other two, so that's a bonus for it. But that's the end of the video. Those are all the articles that I've got. Leave a comment if you have any articles you'd like me to review, or any thoughts on these articles. Do you think I was wrong? Were those articles fantastic? I don't know. Let me know in the comments, and I'll put a link to each of those 3 articles in the description. No offense meant to the authors. I hope none is taken if they happen to end up watching this. But hooray! Hooray, the video's over. You can leave. Subscribe to me though. I want subscribers. I want to make money off of YouTube. Subscribe.